Okay, cool. So let me just set the context. So, um, so today's topic is productivity and getting shit done, which kind of is the core to doing anything, right? So we were just talking that today is 45th day, which in itself is an achievement if you really think about it, right? Like from habit building 6 to 7, like automatically, I at least have a routine that's around this. I'm sure like Anvesh and Pratna and Pranshu, whoever has been attending this regularly would have a routine established around this whole point. Now, productivity is a function of habit building as well. So Pranshu will also talk about habit building in a separate section.
Yeah, tomorrow. That's tomorrow. Yeah.
Tomorrow, yeah. So, okay. So those soft skills, irrespective of what skills we want to learn, be it marketing, be it business finance, be it quantum computing, be it soft skills, improv, theater, at the end of the day, if we are not able to stick to a schedule and measure the quality of the output that we give or are able to extract out of ourselves, then this whole thing goes for a toss, right? So that's essentially why when Pranshu suggested this, we were like, yeah, let's do this, right? Okay, so I'm really excited about this because getting shit done is something we have been thinking about for quite some time now. The getting things done framework by Professor Alan Watkins, that's there. Then the tools, the Rome research, and those kind of tools that we use, that helps us do all these things, whatever we are doing now. But I'm excited to learn new things as well. All right, over to you, Pran.
So that is a good introduction to this. And there's a thing called keystone habits, which means that if you fix that habit, the other habits also sort of line up. Similarly, this is like a keystone skill, and it's not something that is a hard skill and that we are taught often. It's often neglected, and I think a very important part of what we could call as life skills and also more generally soft skills. So that is, I think, a very good introduction to the why of this. And I'll be sharing my screen. I again, like always, have a presentation, and we will go through that as we do the session. And so that is the why that why productivity and talking about it should make sense. And people don't really think about it too much. If you ask yourself, how many times have you thought about this particular subject? Of how efficient you are, how much you're getting things done, and all, then you'll find that it's probably lesser than you should focus on it. Now the disclaimer, and I would like to prefix something here. So there are two things. There's one, these whole kind of facts and tools, right, which can help us and which are sort of research is done into the, let's say, behavior or certain kind of technique that is already done. So you can use those facts, you can use those tools, but it's the question of being aware of them and then sort of using them and making them a system, and the other idea is another thing is the ideas and the practices. So what are some of the ideas of how to think about things, how to think about productivity, and what are like some of the practices that you do on a general basis? What are the sort of ways to approach productivity? So as for so the purpose of this session is to introduce you to the facts and tools, and to also give you sort of resources so that you can look into them more. And I'll be wrong, I feel, and I'll also feel guilty if I'm just using something out of textbook. So the ideas and practices are basically things I've taken in pieces from other places, which has personally worked for me, right? So some of these maybe I've not been doing extensively or for a long time. So maybe I'm doing it in the past, but not now. Or something that I've started to do. But these are all things that I have experienced a little bit. So that is the purpose of today's session. And what in terms of what we're learning today, the write-up that I sent Anvesh was that are there ways to measure the amount of work we put into the hours, and what does it look like? Putting more into the same hours or putting more hours. So this look like part is important because of the visualization, right? And just getting a good feel of it. And then this is important because how else would you track your progress and get feedback? That's why this measure thing is important. Or there are even better things that we can, look to do. It's like, can we hack it? Is there like a process to it, so you can, just follow these steps and you'll get better at productivity? And don't we all, want to have less work time and more leisure time? So there's clearly a forcing function in terms of desire that we all have. So how can we channel it better? And we can do better, but there must be some limits also. So you have to have the idea of the limits and sort of how far things can go. Because otherwise you can get too optimistic or, not be practical. So I hope everyone is with me. And is there any question that you guys want to ask? I'll take it as a no. I'm audible, right?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Good. So, um, what is it? Let's think about it, and really, if we are going to talk about it, let's just define it very clearly, right? So, I want one of you, let's say, anyone, Anvesh, Sam, anyone, to just, in your own words, describe what you think of productivity as.
Oh, for me, Pranshu,
Yeah.
so if I have something decided to do, and if
Yeah.
I do that,
Yeah.
I'm productive, even if it's just one thing in the day. If I do it with the set expectations which I set, I'm
Yeah.
productive.
Yeah.
Else, I'm not. Yeah.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
is there someone else?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Josephine.
Yeah.
I quite agree with Anvesh. I would add that I feel productive if I do the thing I want to do, but in a good way. I mean, like with the quality I expect from it.
Right. So till now we have got getting what you wanted done on time, and the second thing is doing quality work. Um, but Anvesh, let's say, I tell you, let's say you have like, today I have to do a 10-minute writing exercise, and that's my task for today. So I'm not trying to challenge you here. My idea is that if you want to really think about it, then we have to get into the technicals, into the subtleties, right? And you have to also think about what are the components. So clearly, one is the quality aspect, what Josephine said, and what you are saying is, can I get it all done? So like, in a way, like time aspect, can I get it done today on time? So let's think about it more. So
There's also
yeah, tell me.
Pratna has written, I
Yeah.
recently discovered productivity is highly illusionary. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So and yeah, and it is very, very tough to tame productivity as this. So
For me,
this, yeah, tell me.
you want others to answer as well, or you're gonna go ahead?
I was assuming no one is speaking up, but yeah, you can of course speak up if you want to. Yeah.
But from economic standpoint, it's more output per input.
Yeah. So we have quality of, let's say, the same work is done with better quality, and more in output from less input means basically like something like performance. So instead of putting 10 minutes and getting 10 minutes of work, you put 10 minutes and get 15 minutes of work. And what Anvesh said is getting things done on time.
Right.
And what Prarthana is also saying is sort of, it's tough to do it. Yeah. And so this is, I think, a good definition of what time could be. And I also explain what I mean by this exactly, so we are all on the same page. And that will be effective performance into focus time. Now, what I mean by effective is, you can be doing something. So let's say you're working on a writing exercise, or you're working on a essay or something, an essay. So you are doing it, and it's not like you're distracted. You're not watching YouTube in between or something. You're actually writing. But your mind will wander. Maybe you lose your line of thinking. Then you have to and your writing slows down. So there are a lot of inefficiencies in your brain. So think about it like how much output the car engine actually produces, right? And how much actually reaches to the wheel. So there's this in mechanical engineering and all. These are these thermodynamic cycles of, there's the effectiveness of that engine, and then how much friction is there, how much the motors lose, how much the tires and brakes lose, and how much the wheels lose, and everything. So there's like levels to it. So effective is basically what is actually happening when the rubber meets the road. What is the net output? in terms of the output that you are giving. So you're giving 5 minutes of focused. So you're, let's say, focusing on that, at 5 minutes. So the focus time part is there, but you can still get more or less done, and that's where the effective part comes in, right? So that's where like the rubber meets the road kind of way, and that's where you can have change performance. So you can, in 5 minutes of focused work, you can get more or less depending on how effective you are. Performance is basically when you are not practicing something, right? Because this distinction is important, and I wanted to clarify it because there are also sort of two modes in learning or in your head. Basically, it has been found, and it is good if you separate practice from performance, because in practice you need to be creative, you need to allow yourself to make mistakes, you can go slow, and it's actually better to go slow in the when you're in the learning phase. But performance is not that. Performance is actually doing something seriously and urgently, and really being hard on yourself a little bit. But if you think about it, let's say you're studying, right? So you have been studying, and let's say you have been studying it since like 8 years, 10 years, 15 years. So you have already got a lot of practice with studying. So let's say you have an exam or coming up or something, and you say, let me think about it. I have this to do. I have this session to attend. So I should be able to increase my performance. Like, I've been practicing this study thing for these many years. I'll increase my performance and save some time. So even while you're practicing, let's say you're learning a subject, so it's kind of like practical learning it, right? But you can still practice it well. So there's this performance aspect to practice too. But that distinction is important. And then the next thing is sort of focused time. So, you can have, if you are productive, then you can also be productive in sort of the wrong ways. So you can say, I'll clean my room today. Let's say tomorrow is an exam, right? Clean my room today. I'll take a bath. I'll go iron all my clothes. I'll do everything. So you are productive, yes, because productive is basically productive work is anything that you feel you should do, right? So you are kind of productive. No one can say that you've been lazing around that day, but you are not focused on your study. So focusing is important, because it gives you direction, kind of how like scalar and vectors work. So you can travel at 40 kilometers per hour and go left, right, left, right, left, right. Or you can travel straight at 10 kilometers per hour and reach quicker. So that's the focus part. And the time is, how much mental time and energy you give. So I hope this is clear.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now this is a game I want to play with you guys. So, I've deliberately been very rough with it, and it's a very messy thing. But what I want to do is just look at it and, tell me between these slots of 40 to 60, 60 to 80, or 80 to 100, right? If you have to write something on it or make a note or do something else, what percentage does it look like it has been already filled with? So is it 40 to 60, 60 to 80, 80 to 100? So Ansela, if you're here, what would you say it is?
I'd say 60%.
So between 60 and 80, that slot?
Yeah.
Okay. Will people agree with this by and large? It's between 60 and 80%?
Yeah.
Yeah. So now I'll be moving on to the next slide.
One second. And the question was, whatever you see on the screen, how much percentage of the entire notebook it fills up? So whatever he has written, what percentage of the notebook is filled up?
Oh, it's 80%, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay. So now this is the exact same page, and I'll look at this. So does it look closer to 40 to 60 slot now than 60 to 80? You do see a lot of white space where you can do shit. It's kind of like half, maybe even a little more than half that is empty. It's half, I guess. So
I
will
feel
you
like
guys
it's
agree
more.
with this?
I feel like it's more than the previous page for some reason.
Yeah. So
The lines are drawn, of course.
yeah. So so is it closer to 40 to 60 than 60 to 80? How much space you perceive as being here. Yes, Pratna, would you agree with that?
No.
What would you say is the slot here?
The
Like, how much is it filled?
part of the notebook.
Yeah, like how much page is filled, so that if you have to write something else, you will have the other part empty. So it's 50% filled, then
Okay.
50% you can write. So
Hmm.
what percentage is filled?
It's still 60 to 80, but on a lower scale, 60 to 80.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah. So like if you asked me, I would say it's probably 50, because like, you know, if you see at this white space and then how much like it's like, I think it's close to 50. It's That's my opinion. But here even me, if I'm looking at it, it seems like something like 70 or something. But the idea is, and you know, this was a thing that I discovered some years back, and it was pretty interesting. So let's think about productivity in these terms, right? So what we did here was, you can say, was decluttering. But productivity, because it has to. And yeah, one other thing, if this page is your day, right, then that sort of notebook, that chapter could be a week, that notebook of 365 pages could be a year, those notebooks could be basically a life, you know. So within that context, how do you think of productivity? So what we did here was basically decluttering, but there are two aspects to productivity, right? The time aspect and the mental aspect, which is the performance part. Like, you know, performance is, let's say, the mental aspect, and time is how much time you give. So in terms of the mind thing, the mental thing, so what I can do is I can make these, you know, these smaller in size, or I can be very skillful with it, so that you know, sorry. So if I'm skillful at it, then I can draw this thing faster, right? And if my mind is clear, sort of. So let's say this is a mind, and then you declutter it in some way. Then again, you will have more space for when you are actually performing something. You know, we talked about the rubber meets the road thing. They are doing that writing exercise for 5 minutes, but if your mind is clear, then you'll do better. So, you know, if you are doing it with urgency, then it will make a difference. If you are being a lazy thinker, you know, it's the lazy thinking is a thing. And why? Because uh, it affects productivity. That's why it's called lazy thinking. And you know, your mind can wander. So that's, let's say, one analogy in the mind mental side. Now let's think about the time side, you know. So let's say you're writing something here, and I just instead of making this image smaller or word smaller, I just use less words. So instead of a sentence which has 10 words, I can get that same thing, same message across, but in lesser words, right? So that is word efficiency. And or you can say I'm being more uh, like efficient with my time. And one thing is the moving bubbles around thing. So let's say, you know, if this is your uh, page, then if you need some, let's say, a big circle of this size somewhere, then you don't really have a big circle of, you know, let's say a coin size. You want to put a coin here somewhere, 2 rupees coin, you know, the big one. It looks very difficult, but if you can move these bubbles around, suddenly, like, you know, actually you can put at least, I think, 4 or 5 coins here. So you can say that that can be your time management. So actually time management, that's why it declutters your head, because uh, you feel you have 4 tasks and you feel you are very busy today. But actually, if you write down, okay, this is 10 minutes, it will take me like half an hour and all, and let's say that total is 2 hours, so you say I'll get it done between 9 and this 2 hour work between 9 and 12, then your whole day is decluttered. So that is like time management and smart work. Smart work is basically being more efficient. So studying smart, instead of studying more chapters or more like detail more questions, you like find a way to study less questions and still get it done. So uh, that is productivity here. And now we have some good news and bad news, you know. So the good news is that there are vastly more possibilities, and in fact is a lot to gain from studying this and thinking about this. But it is also vastly more tough to be consistent if you have tried to do this, like Prasna said, right? It is very tough to be consistent here. And so let me ask someone. So let me ask you, what would be 100% utilization with respect to the page thing here? Can someone answer?
One thing I also feel is that sometimes we cannot put value to works that we do. So some things that we do might seem like really unnecessary, like reading a book,
Yeah.
but it actually does add value.
Yeah.
So not always can we put the right value to an activity at that point of time.
Okay, so you mean all tasks are not created equal in terms of productivity?
Because productivity is a concept based on the outcome.
Yeah.
And sometimes you can't see the outcome at that moment and you cannot put a value to
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah. So, this thing is something that will come under decision making, because then you have to see the long term consequences of things. And then also, if you can see how the things play out, you can make your plans. So instead of doing this, I'll study book more. So I'll be doing a session on that maybe sometime. But you're right, definitely. But we cannot cover this in detail here. But I do get your point. But I want you to answer, Prasna, if you can. What is 100% for you in this scenario? If that page is given, in that definition of page and productivity, what would be 100%?
So if you see the page, maybe I can equate it to a design. There is adequate amount of content that gives you enough output, but there's also some white space, which means there's also free time.
Yeah. So
that
what would be
you can
100%?
spend for, of the page? Of the page,
What would be 100% productivity in terms of the page utilization definition? Like if this was 100%, what would it look like? That is my question.
so maybe 85% of it will be filled,
Huh.
because the rest of the time you need free. Like I wouldn't
Yeah.
want people
Yeah.
to work like completely.
Yeah, exactly. So the 100% page would be you can have two definitions. One is sort of stupid, and that is that everything is covered in ink. That doesn't make sense. That's like saying every second of your life, even when you're sleeping, you're doing something. But in a more sort of sensible way, 100% could be that you have written stuff systematically. You have no real space between like bubbles and all. So you cannot really find a way to like make bubbles. Like actually, if you have to, you'll have to make this whole page into a bubble because everything is written so closely. But at the same time, it has to be like it can be very very small, like tiny microscopic handwriting and all of that. So you need a microscope to see it. So it's like you can take it too far. That is the point. So there's a line between possibilities and practicalities. So something practical would look like it's a not too large in text size. So image also, it's not too large, but it's not too small so that the image is not, the diagram is not visible. So you have that like enough good size. You have covered it enough. You have written things systematically so that a lot of space is not wasted. And the idea is that for most purposes, every page, like every day of your life, doesn't need to be 100% productive. Even from a practical standpoint, where you're on that line between possibilities and impracticality, you don't need every page to be filled with like perfect text size and image size and all. 8 on 10 seems like pretty good for most purposes, right? But then there are these exceptional times where you have a like deadline soon, or interview, or you have to finish a course, to learn something, you have to submit a work, do a presentation. That time you need to be exceptional because it is demanding. And actually that also sometimes becomes a defining movement, because that's where all the competition and all the times you get better personally and get better than other people lie, right? So of course exceptional times exist, and that also make you exceptional. So the idea is we do need both a practical approach, and then we need a way to take it close to 100% of our capacity. So how do we do this? Is there a process to it? But before that, let me go through some key concepts, and you can stop me at any time if you feel you have a question. And if there's anything in the chat, then Moses, please help me with that. Yeah. So one thing that probably you have heard of it, but maybe you have not thought about defining it. So what is what is willpower? So if any one of you can tell me your understanding of it.
Basically, I guess it means using your will to do stuff that sometimes you don't even want to do, but you force yourself to do it. So it's just, yeah.
Yeah. So What you mean is that you don't want to do it. So the willpower is something that wills you to do something that you do not want to do. Like it can be work or something else. Okay, so yeah, so that's a good definition. But if you have to really now, if we are being technical, right, and if we have to think in terms of numbers, 100% and all, if we have to measure it, like we said in the start of getting a feedback or something, then we have to sort of put some numerical attributes to it. And it is also very useful because it has been found that willpower is a very, very widely misunderstood concept. One thing that is, but some people have this intuition that, you know, if you keep increasing your willpower, it will keep getting better like a muscle in your body. But the important thing here is that there is a limit. It's like 100, let's say 100-liter reservoir. So today you can have 100 liters of your willpower. That's, let's say, your base level. Now what will affect it is, yes, like, you know, good sleep will increase it, bad sleep will decrease it, food, things like that will change it. But let's say your base level on an average normal day, given how healthy you are, is 100 liters. So after you have exhausted, and now that's how you start your day for the most part. And mostly there's nothing in the day generally that happens that can help you recoup. So maybe you rest a bit, so it gives you a few more liters or something. But mostly it just keeps going down. Especially if you're being productive, you're being something like 7 on 10 or 8 on 10. You don't have time to increase your reservoir again. So, but what has been found is after you reach that 100, you know, there is basically no way that you can will yourself into doing something, and you will fail. It's not about if you are a god, like considered a god by people, or if you are a small child or something. It's just simply a fact that there is a very hard limit, and it has been observed, and people don't seem to realize it of how quick it is. Like it's basically like, you know, like you are 99 and you think you can push yourself, but 2 liters later you are just gone. It's like you are doing a pull-up or something, so you are not sure even after 8 pull-ups or something that maybe can you do the 10th. But after 10th you try, but your hand just doesn't go up no matter what you do. So it's very similar in that way. Again, in terms, it's like a muscle in that way too. So that's important to understand that you have a quantity. Now the second thing is short-term mental capacity. So you're doing something right now. You have a particular, let's say to finish some chapter or reading a book's chapter or something, you know, or make notes regarding something. So you decide that you will work on this and you'll not stop before you are done. So what is observed is that if you push yourself, let's say after some particular amount of time, so till some time you sort of are at one level of focus and attention and everything. But after a point, it starts decreasing very steeply, your attention and like your ability to focus and all. So the problem here is that you have a short mental capacity too, and that's sometimes referred to as mental block. So you're doing something and you're tired, and you're like, yeah, now I can't do this shit. Like just go away. I don't want to see you. You know, but you have planned to do it, but midway you stop. So that's sort of mental block. And then there's a long-term mental capacity which is called burnout. So you have a like exams from college or something, and they're for 2 weeks, lot of stress. You keep doing it. 12th day, sometimes it happens. You just like, nah, I'm taking a day off or something. You try, you don't have willpower. You know, burnout decreases your willpower a lot. You don't have short mental capacity for long. Like you have, let's say, a couple times you can do half an hour, 1 hour study sessions or something, but then you are burnt out. You just can't go on. That long-term burnout is a real thing. And then there are these heroic acts, right? So now let's define heroic acts as willpower into time. Now what I mean by that is, if you are doing something very, very tough, given your abilities and given your willpower and like given your situation, then actually it should be won by time. I'll correct it later. So like, how much willpower can you exert per unit time? You know, that will be sort of like what a heroic act is. So heroic act is something like you have a whole semester study and you're like 2 days away from the exam. You're like, I have to top it. I have to ace it. So I'll do the whole semester thing in 2 days. Now it's a heroic thing because you can't expect it to do again and again. People will appreciate you for it and you yourself will not believe it if you actually do it. So this is basically a heroic act. But the point is you cannot count on being heroic all the time. But of course, this concept is important because you need to be a hero sometimes. And the last thing is useful time and focus time. Every time that you do something that you feel good about, it can be washing clothes, it can be, let's say, even brushing your teeth. Anything that you would rather not do and requires willpower is useful work, because there is some value to it, like some good reasons for brushing teeth, for things like that. So there's some reason, some good value to it. So you are doing useful work. So you are using your time. But focus time is different. So you can work for 10 hours a day, which includes your washing clothes and something. But let's say you have that exam coming up, but you only study for it for 7 hours. Then your focus time will be 7. But your time for that day will be 10. So that distinction is important, right? So I'll move on now. Yeah. Okay. So now there's some tectonic shifts, and I call them tectonic shifts is because these are often very, very misunderstood, and people generally, for the most part, for very long periods of time, have the wrong ideas, including myself. So willpower is important. What for? So if you ask yourself, what willpower is clearly important, but what for is it important? So you will say for important tasks. Let's say you have an interview coming up, and you have to fill the form for it. The deadline is tomorrow, but you are and you would procrastinate. Say I'll do it tomorrow. It's very tough the next day. Let's say you have a lot of work, you're low on sleep, you ate shit food, so you're feeling very bad. But it will take 2 hours, and it's like 3 hours left for the deadline. Willpower is very important for things like that. Things where you need to be a hero, things very, 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 very important to you. But then the question is, should willpower be used for those things? Or willpower is important for those things, but is willpower the only thing that can get those things done? Or why do we actually need willpower for getting everything important done? So willpower is only important because it is used for important stuff. But what if that important stuff can be done without using much willpower? So the idea is that, instead of thinking that you have to increase your willpower and rely on it to get things done, the idea should be, when I end the day, if that's a normal day, not a single drop of that 100 liters of my willpower should have been used, because things were just easy. That should be the aim. Now, of course, something suddenly comes up or something, then you can have some, let's say, 5 liters or 100 liters gone, right? Some small thing came up. If an emergency came up, you're panicking, then you have that whole 100 liters left, even at the end of the day. That's the way you should think about it. And that's a shift that is often needed in many people, to really think about productivity the right way. It's not moving fast, breaking things, and being like, okay, today I used every single drop of my willpower. I'm proud of myself that I pushed myself that hard. The idea is to make things so that not a drop of it is touched in the entire day, right? Which is impossible, of course, but you can get very far just from that aim. Instead of 0, it should be 100. So that is completely, opposite. The other thing is that heroic acts necessarily something we face. So there's also this question. Yeah, is there something in the chat, Sam?
Yeah, just exclamation. Wow.
Okay. So are heroic acts something necessarily that we have to face? So ask yourself that this thing that has become such a big deal for me, or it needs a heroic act from my side, did it have to be that way? And instead of thinking, sometimes, and I had there's this perverse notion of, let's say you have an exam and you're like, I'll be the guy who studies least for it and still does well, right? That is good. And there's nothing wrong with it. But then again, you have to keep other things in mind. The idea here is, what you will say is, I'll keep the least amount of time possible and study only the important parts, which probably will come in the exam. And then I'll give like 1/3 of the time that my roommate is giving, and I'll still get more marks than him. So that's an heroic act that you're taking on yourself. But the thing is, these heroic acts sometimes you are attracted to them in the sense that you rationalize them and you make a normal thing into a heroic act for yourself. It's not easy to understand this, but if you have done this, you will know what I mean. But the idea is that always question is is every time you feel like you have been being pushed, that you are faced with a time where all 100 liters would be used. There's a risk of burnout. There's a risk of very high anxiety and like panic. Is that situation necessary? Uh, was that necessary? And could you have done something about it? Right. So the aim is not to use willpower to be heroic and get better at being a hero. It's being hoping to never be a hero in your entire life, so that when something or someone really needs you, you can be that. Just like that willpower thing. That's another attitude shift. And so that's two things that I wanted to sort of highlight and have been very very important to me also in terms of how they affected me and how my thoughts have changed. So now let's Vedi. Yeah, Sam.
There's a question from
Yeah,
Prarthana.
yeah.
If you love what you do, you'll not have to work a single day in your life.
Yeah.
Which also implies that you don't have to exhaust a lot of willpower, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So if you love what you do, or you don't love it, but somehow you think you love it, so that's another thing. Or if there's this whole another group around you, so you don't love it, but you just carried in the momentum of others around you. So there's a lot of ways, and that's what we'll explore also, like going forward. But the idea is this, yeah. So now let's weigh the two options, right? And this is another thing that sometimes people get wrong. So let's think about a situation where the time is fixed. So we have fixed time. So like you remember, productivity is effective performance into focused time. Now let's assume you are effective and let's assume you are focused on a task. So let's call it performance into time, right? And let's fix the time part. So now the change lies in the performance part. So what that would look like is 5-minute writing exercise. How much can you get done? So it will depend on how clear your mind is, like we saw a while back, how urgently you're thinking about it. Is there any lazy thinking going on? So if you're sort of even a normal person, out of 5 minutes you'll probably do at least 3 minutes of work. So what's the difference there? Like 3 to 5 minutes, like 50% difference, like 66%. So you can, let's say, have a difference of 66% generally, and that's like almost like the max that you can do. It's like saying that instead of doing a chapter in 5 hours, you can do it in 3 hours. It's very rare that you can do that. And I don't mean that you're cutting out on questions or sections. I mean, you've decided that I'll do these many sections, and then it looks like you're doing it comfortably on a normal day. It will take 5 hours. If you push yourself, then you can do it in 3 hours. That same exact thing. Very rare you'll go below that. So the delta here is basically like sort of half, like 66, something like that, around half. But if you fix the performance and you think about the time, right? In theory, there is no limit. So if you want to do something comfortably, or even let's say you want to work at a rate of 1 minute of effectiveness per 5 minutes. So if you want to get that 5 minutes of work done, you can give yourself 25 minutes and work at 20% 20% efficiency every time. So in theory, you can just keep increasing time. But of course, it's not that broad. But the idea is it's often more broad than people think. Because when you think about that bubble thing, right? And you feel about, okay, aaj main itna busy hu, or I am very well occupied today. Actually, very far from that. It is actually very, very, very far from that. So you can say at least a factor of 2. So if you list out all the important work, like actual productive work that you will call productive, it can be useful in sense you can be brushing your teeth or something, and it can be focused in terms of your goal. But both work, if you write down how many minutes it will take, it will probably be much less than like 4 or 5 hours per day or 6 hours. Generally, like maybe 10 hours, but like you'll still have a lot, like generally double the time than you thought you had. And then of course, if you plan things better, you can increase it, right? So if you have something to do You can plan things so that you get more time. So the idea is that generally the variance is more in the time part, and it is more in your control, and it is a more sort of more worthy aim to tackle. The time thing where time is fixed and you're just like, you know, being hard on yourself and running too fast and all, that is basically like unwieldy. That is again, you're saying that you're going for that willpower thing, right? Pushing yourself all the time. So the idea is that if the time is fixed and performance is fixed, you see, so clearly time is the most important factor. So the idea is to give yourself enough time first. And all that really is, you know, if you're giving yourself time, is a time with mental clarity and mental peace. So you have these two things, then you have real time where you can do things, because time where you don't have this is not really time. Now again, you can make good decisions, and we'll probably have a session sometime on that. I think it's next week. Yeah. And then this, you have emotional quotient, and you know that emotional regulation, so that you can clear your head better. And actually the next week sessions are this EQ 101 and decision making. But if you look at it really, what it boils down to, the main problem is consistent execution, right? All other things are in sort of need, are in pursuit of consistent execution. So that execution is important. So what you have planned to do in how much time, and doing it consistently. That's the whole problem. And the biggest component is willpower management here, right? So you can include things like motivation, inspiration, and feedback loops. So feedback loops are something like, you put out a song on Instagram, a lot of good comments and everything. So you are like, okay, I'll put out one more song. I thought I'll be doing it by next week, but now I'll do it within 2 days because I got so much good feedback. So yeah, so productivity is time and performance. But if you really look at it, productivity is mostly time management. If you look at time management, it is mostly finding a way to consistently execute. And if you look at consistent execution, then it is mostly willpower management, right? So productivity is loosely willpower management. Now, the biggest thing that you can do, and the sort of major thing, you know, is getting out of your own way. So, you know, if you think about it in terms of disturbances in your life, distractions, or like, you know, that person asked me to help, yeah, there was no food, so I had to make it for myself. Then my time was wasted in that. Or something unexpected came up, oh, I had to write that email. All those are valid reasons. But if you really think about your productivity, you'll find that the major reason, by major I mean more than 50%, is basically you. So if you had done the right thing, the most honorable thing, where you do not feel guilty and all, you will definitely be okay more than half the time where you had a problem. So now ask yourself these questions. Whenever you are thinking about productivity, right, and you're thinking about a task, so you have to think about, okay, is there enough time for it? And yeah, so one other thing, the idea is that consistent execution is the key to productivity, but you can't be consistent in a one-time small task. So this task has to be like a goal, which is a little bit long term, not very long term, not very short term, at least some length of time, right? Needs some dedication. It needs like enough hours. It cannot be 2 hours. It can be 200 hours. 2000 hours again doesn't make much sense, but it has to be some reasonable amount of time and reasonable amount of work to really get going with consistently execution and measuring it and all. So let's say you have something like that. So is there enough time for it? You ask, do you have enough resources for it? Do you have enough ambition for it? So do you really want to do that? Or will you just lose motivation after 2 days? So are you healthy enough? Is it like, you know, like one month later you are going to have a surgery or something? So of course you will not be healthy, or just otherwise you don't have food where you are in quarantine right now. So it's very, let's say, so you have a goal of working out every day. Your diet is not in your hand, so it will probably not work out. So these questions, and you know, if you ask yourself, most of the time you will have all of this covered. You'll have enough time, you'll have enough resources, you'll have enough ambition, and you will be healthy enough. So is there anything else that you guys think is something that is a deal breaker when it comes to a long-term goal? So if you don't have that, then you cannot do it. Like if you're not healthy, then you cannot attain a goal and be productive. So what else is there? Is there something else?
Emotional stable.
Emotional stability.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's right. I should have included it here. So yeah, that's the idea of your clarity of mind and emotional quotient, and yeah, that's right. So now, if you look at willpower management 101, and the reason I'm calling it that is because that is basically what productivity essentially boils down to, according to the framework that we have set up for ourselves. So the idea is to get the major things first, right? So if you have noticed this pattern that we are boiling things down. So we have defined productivity in two things. We have taken one part, then this part is mostly this part is mostly this. So the idea is that, if you're doing a lot of things at the same time, it gets very tough. So similarly for willpower management, these are like very big stuff, big chunks of stuff that make up for the majority of it. One is creating habits. So I'll be covering this in detail tomorrow, but the idea of habits is just eliminating willpower. So let's say you do not have a habit of brushing your teeth. So it will be very tough for you to get up every day and do that, and you're doing something else. You might not realize it, but something else can be like maybe bathing every day. And someone who has a habit of bathing every day or brushing every day versus someone who doesn't, the amount of willpower that you require is night and day. In fact, it's infinity difference, because that one is zero basically, and the other is some amount. So that's basically, so again, remember the aim. You do not have a touch of drop of that willpower of that 100 liters by the end of the day. That's the aim. So that's one way, habits. The other way is tools. So let's say you have to wake up at 9 a.m. tomorrow, right? And you do not want to oversleep. You like 7 hours of sleep is enough. Why sleep for 9 hours? And if you do not have an alarm or something, you'll probably do that. So these are tools. So instead of waking up at 5 a.m. in the morning and then keep getting up at like half an hour interval so that you do not oversleep, you can just stop worrying about it and then wake up at 9 o'clock directly. And that again ties up to how some people snooze. So they have the first alarm at 5 o'clock and then at 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, and they have to actually get up at 8 o'clock. So they are still using tools and they're still thinking it sort of reduces their willpower in some. That's why you're doing it in the first place. Same thing for reminders, same thing for using a calendar. So these are tools. So otherwise you would have to put mental effort, put your willpower into remembering these things and not messing up. The third is systems, right? So let's say you have a tiger mom in your house, which is like an Asian term, which means, moms who are very serious about their students, their children studying and getting good grades and all. That eliminates willpower, because, if you're at least till teenage or something, mid-teenage at least or something, if you have a person like that in your house, then there's a very good chance that you will not need any willpower to do some studying every day. Just their presence itself and just what they do for you or to you, will be enough. Or something like, if you say like, I have a system where I really like this TV series. So I'll do this one chapter, it takes me like 2 hours, and then I'll watch one episode. So it takes willpower, yes, to do this. But the idea is it takes lesser willpower, because if you think about it, an exam is a very long-term, very long cycle return reward loop. So if you're working for something today and the exam is 3 months later, and the results will come out like 5 months later from now, today it will not seem very important. So there is this trick where people have actually candy gums, gummy candies, and they paste it on, like, let's say, every couple of sections in the book. And when they're done with that section, they take that candy that is being stuck at the end of that section and then eat it and then move to the next section. I don't know about the hygiene and all, but the idea is it gives you instant gratification, which is not really instant so that you procrastinate, but it is not very long term, so you're not serious in the moment at all. So it still reduces your willpower, because it is much easier to study for 2 hours to watch that one episode 2 hours later than to wait for that results 5 months later. So it decreases your willpower consumption by a lot. The fourth is procrastination in plans, right? So it has been found that um, everyone procrastinate, and there's multiple reasons, there are multiple tricks also. So the underlying idea is that procrastination is anything that uh, procrastination happens when you face anything that makes you feel negative emotions. So you are nervous about it, you are anxious, you feel it's very daunting, you feel you failed it in the past, so you are that fear of failure again, you have trauma from that activity. So anything that is a negative feeling associated with that task, can lead you to procrastinate. And sometimes what happens, there's a normal task with no negative feelings, but you have procrastinated it for 2 days, on it for 2 days. Now there's a negative feeling because you're like, okay, I've already done this. Can I do this today? Or, the toxicity comes in. So procrastination, if it happens because of negative emotions, if you remove the negative emotions from it, most of the procrastinations will go away. And a lot of times there's a lot of reasons, like I said, being hard on yourself, being really really conscious. And that's what also often happens is the biggest tasks are procrastinated the most, and often they're the most important. So you can be very productive, so your house will be very clean, you will have everything like your timetable made out and everything, you have contacted your parents this week and all, but the big thing that you have to do that day, that is not being done, the elephant in the room. So you've been productive, but you have procrastination on the main thing. And because that main thing is you have made it into this big elephant in your head. Now, I should have linked a podcast episode here. I just remembered of it. It's so the Margaret Atwood is on it. It's from it's called Work and Time, Work and Life by Shane Parrish. Not Shane Parrish. I'll link it after the session and put it on on the group, this presentation. So they talk about it in all. So the idea is that procrastination and planning. So you can also plan for it. You can plan. So if you have plans, you don't have to make decisions every time, because if you have to make a decision to right now to watch a YouTube video or to watch a course video, then that takes some willpower, because you have to make a choice. But if you have already made a plan, then you have decreased your willpower, because it's like, I've planned this already, so I don't have to keep making decision every time. And the last is basically if you can be focused and religious, right? So if you have the tricks, or if you have the habit, or if you have the ability to focus, and you have been working religiously, you have a good work ethic, then automatically you'll not need willpower as much as the next person who is not generally focused, who is not commonly good at work ethic, commonly strong with work ethic. So why do we fail if these things, are like, they're pretty obvious, right? Like habits and tools and all, like not like exactly in these terms, but somehow intuitively you do have a realization that I do need an alarm clock, I do need to create these habits. Like, if my mom is on my, ready to burn my ass, I have to, it will be easier for me to work. Like, you know these things. So why do we fail? So a big reason is being conscious about them, right? So now, one of the big things that has been discovered in a lot of experiments in social psychology and all of that, I've written articles on it, I've read about it. So deadline, goal versus dream. First is basically a very common thing. It's a common trope that if you have something, it's a dream until you put a deadline to it. And that this guy called Tim Urban, and he's one of the greatest bloggers of our time. He had a blog called Wait But Why, and he is also one of the most popular TED Talks. I think it's in the top 2, if not the most watched TED Talk of all time, which is on procrastination, right? And the whole idea is that the deadline makes a difference. So that's what I've linked here. And the second thing is, even if you have a deadline, right? And if you have a plan, so do you have slots for what you're doing or not? Because that gives you self-accountability. So it has, I don't remember where I've read it, and I tried to find the source, but I couldn't. It's probably in the book, The Organized Mind. by Daniel J. Levitin, or in The Power of Habit, I don't remember. So the idea is that you're 3x more likely to get something done if you have a fixed slot for it. So let's say there is a group of people and they've laid out their plans. Let's say 2-hour plans that they want to do for the next week. And there's a separate group of people. One group they both promise to do the work, 2-hour thing every day, but one has not set a time slot. So I'll do it in the morning between 11 to 12 and I'll do it in the evening between 8 to 9. The one group has it fixed, the other doesn't. So there was a more than 3 times difference in just that. It was found that people who do that found it 90% easier to follow. So if 90% easier, basically like 90% willpower, in a way. So if you have to get something done, especially something important, then block out your time for it. So if you have a long-term goal, let's say you have a goal for 6 months down the line, let's say you need 3 hours. So today it's okay if you put 3 hours every day. Block those 3 hours for every day. Keep margin of safety. And the important thing is that those slots should be sustainably selected. It cannot be between 3 and 4 and in the night. Use common sense, use day works, and then have fixed time slots. And then you'll be conscious about it. Because what we are doing here is, if you have a deadline, you're conscious. Okay, that deadline is approaching. If you have a slot, and that's between 8 and 9 o'clock, but instead you choose to work or choose not to work, then you'll be conscious. Oh shit. I have been working now. I should have been working now, but I'm not. The third is, fighting the attention addiction. So if you think about the problem of the 21st century in a lot of ways is all these big corporations and industries. It can be sort of the adult film industry. It can be, things like YouTube, Facebook, because attention is currency to them. So best minds are using sort of weaknesses and circuits of your brain to hack your brain into spending more time on their apps and all. So it has led to 2 things, right? It has led to less control over attention compared to any time in history. Like it is much tougher to get your attention in control than in any other time in history. And also you have very short attention spans because of this. Because you keep switching, right? And there's a lot of costs also to this context switching, which I sort of talked about in my previous section. So this is a video related to that. And the last thing is, thinking about stress. So when you are stressed, people think it's generally a bad thing, and it is. In fact, stress and loneliness have been found to be one of the largest contributors to death, especially in well-off nations, period. It's not like, I'm not even comparing it to cancer or like cigarettes. Like it trumps everything, but it's basically not researched or it's not diagnosed, so that actual numbers are not coming up like in the diagnosis or the death. But stress can actually kill, loneliness actually kills, and associated like anxiety and all of that. But the idea is stress is not a bad thing, because there's a reason that human brain has developed this mechanism of stress, because it was precisely to tackle tough situations. But again, what happens is if you feel like you're in a tough situation every day, every minute, then you get burned out, your willpower goes to zero, you're not being productive, you feel like shit, and things go on, and then negative feedback loops. So you become anxious, then you become anxious about being anxious, then you become angry, and you become angry about being angry. Like Mark Manson talks about in his book, what was it?
Subtle.
Not giving a subtle art of not giving a fuck. And so it's called the feedback loop from hell. This particular thing. So this thing is very real. But the idea is stress can be your friend, and that's what this talk is about. This person, Kelly McGonigal. So I have followed her. I follow her on Twitter also. Like I really respect her, and she has this awesome TED talk on it. The idea is that if you look at your heart and your biological indicators of when you are stressed, then those are the same markers as when someone is showing courage. So stress and courage are basically the same things, but stress is a negatively connotated word because of how society has termed it. So the idea is that stress is the same thing. So you can either be courageous or you can be negatively affected by stress. So, and courage is very good because what happens to your heart, your like capacity, your heartbeat increases. What happens in stress? Your heartbeat increases, your lung capacity, heart capacity increases. there's this sweating and all. There's a lot of things that gets your body ready physically and also mentally. So it's like a power. So think about it. If I can give you stress for 2 hours every day, and you can get your most important work done, and it can be like a 3-hour work, but because of stress, you can get your most important work in 2 hours every day, and that whole day is free. Wouldn't you like that? The idea is that stress can be your friend, and to change that, become conscious of when you are feeling stressed, and to consciously think about it as a tool instead of a negative thing. So all of this is basically these obvious things fail because of your conscious effort in thinking about these things and the idea of this tectonic shifts in attitude. So now all we have is exercises till the end of the session and related stuff. So now what I want you guys to do is to have a goal that is good enough to, like 3 months make sense for it. So it can be a goal which has like 200 hours, 300 hours or something. So let's say 100 hours per month, or 100 hours per month with 3 hours per day or something like that. But it has to have some material seriousness to it, and it has to be like a real goal. Now, if you have a goal that you have today, which fits this criteria, then great. But you can also think of an imaginary goal that sometime in the future you will like to take on, or in the past you have done. But this approximately timeline for that is 3 months. Right? So, and we'll go through the productivity, how it looks like at 3 months, 1 month, 1 week, 48 hours on that day, right? Just, you don't need to talk about it unless you want to. If you want to, you can tell me what it is. But I want you to think and write down somewhere right now. Like you have to, like there is no, because everything going forward depends on that, right? What that goal will be. A worthy goal. It cannot be too easy or too hard. Just get from whatever you have done. You get the idea of what I mean by sustainable 8 by 10 productivity days for 3 months. A goal like that.
Also, Pranshu, you were talking about margin of safety, right? What do you mean by that? 3-hour
Okay.
block, yeah.
Yeah. So it's like basically we have a tendency to be very optimistic. So, it often happens, you think you can get it done in 2 hours comfortably, it takes more than that. So a good thumb rule is that when you have 90% of the plan, like when you have 90% of the work done, 90% is still remaining. So that's like a thumb rule. So it's like, if you're thinking you have 2 hours for it, you put 2 hours for it, right? And you think comfortably, I should be able to do it in that is 2 hours of work, but comfortably you can do it in 5 hours, right? But 2 hours of focused intense work. So let's say you have like 90% of that 2 hours would be like 120 minutes ka 90% is like, let's say like 108 minutes or whatever, So, but say after 108 minutes you have still 90% remaining. Don't get into details. The idea is you can take it as 50%, 80%. Margin of safety is basically what you think is a good, and it can differ from task to task, because some tasks actually need much more margin of safety than others. So, it can be something like you have done it a lot of times you do it every month. So, yaar, कि इसमें 2 घंटे ही लगना है. It will take 2 hours only, maybe 3 hours. So, you keep like 50% margin of safety. But you're doing something new. You don't really know how much time it will take. So, you're making a guesstimate. So, keep a more broad margin of safety. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. So, I hope by now you guys have a goal in mind. And very soon I'll be getting to your ideas, but before that I'll give some common tips, right? So few common tips before we do what we do next. So for the start, at least, right? Set simple goals, but that goal has to be within the scope of that larger challenge. So it cannot be like a random goal, Set goals within the boundaries of that bigger challenge that you're aiming for. But make sure it is small. In fact, make sure it is as small as you can do, at least for the first day, and then just try to, instead of having big goals and increasing them by 5% every day. Try to keep very small goals and try to increase them by a larger percent every day till you get to a good rate, right? The second thing is worthy deadlines. It's very easy sometimes to cheat ourselves. You know, if you're making a deadline for 3 months later and you think, like, at least today, like this week till at least like this month I have to give 3 hours every day or something. So let me think what I'll put in my 3 hours for today, and like, okay, so if I'm putting 3 hours every day, then 7 days later, how much should be done? So don't cheat. So, and don't be too hard on yourself. It should be worthy, but it should not be impossible. The third thing is self-discipline, right? So it's basically, if you have said that you will do this and you have this slot, then you do it in the slot. You're finding it tough, decrease the length of the slot. You're finding it more willpower than you can handle, set the goal to be simpler. Make it less burdening by allowing for low effectiveness. So instead of keeping like a 10-minute task and thinking of doing it in 20 minutes, think I'll do this 10-minute thing in 50 minutes, 20% effectiveness, right? Fourth is focusing sustainably. So there are ways to focus. One way to focus is you tell your mom, you know, sit in front of me and make sure you beat me every time I stop. Like, you know, I'm being ridiculous with my idea, but you get the point. The idea is, if you are doing something and if there's a way to focus that you're developing for yourself, it has to be sustainable. You know, is there something in the chat, Sam?
No.
Okay, so the next is implementing a system. So if you have a system like, you know, I will do this for 2 hours and then I'll watch 1 episode, then do it, or change your system. But whatever you do, don't worry about the system too much. Like, it should broadly feel right, but make sure you implement it, right? And the last is that taking action you don't feel like it. This is a very common trope on productivity Twitter and growth Twitter and a lot of other places. But you know what it means. But that's why it's a common tip, right? These are common things. So now, before you jump into it, let me give you a bit of background. So I've been a long time student, both in terms of like scholarly stuff. But why I say long time student? Because I've been like in a place where a lot of expected from me, and I have been rather good at it too. And I've also been a student of productivity for a long time, right? So this particular subject, I've treated it like a subject for at least 4 years. And I've thought about it a lot since more than a decade, like no doubt about that. And as a way to tell you what I mean by these things, so, you know, all my childhood, I think from starting from class 5th or like probably end of 4th, well into like class 9th. So there's a little break in class 10th, but and then 11th, 12th was again like that. So basically all through my childhood, it's even nutty to me right now when I think about it, but almost majority, like 80% of my days were planned by the hour every single day. And that was my childhood, right? You know, so TV or anything. And I did a lot of stuff, like I did co-curricular and all of that. So I have a lot of, you can say, like experience for my age in terms of like this timetable and productivity thing. And it's pretty, like, it's kind of crazy when I talk to other people and you see if there are other people like that. Very few people who have their whole childhood basically working by the hour every day. So the next thing is consistency is key. And you know, it's very tough. There's something that you realize that consistency is both key, much more than you think. In terms, you can think it's like increasing willpower or some tricks or, you know, having a good enough goal that excites you, but like none of that matters. Consistency is key. And it's very tough to do it. And you fail a lot of times and you have to pull yourself back and get the momentum going again. The next thing is, you know, extended periods of productivity at the level at which you will respect, you know. So normal, like let's say 8 on 10 is something like a very good work ethic. I'll say 8 on 10. 10 on 10 is like crazy, like Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, right? You know, 5 is more like what we are on normal days when you are working. 2 and 3 are when what we are, let's say in some quarantine, we do not work or we are dysfunctional. 1 is basically just depressed or those like very tough to do anything, low on willpower. So very few people will actually experience being on 8 on 10 productivity for years. And this is a fact. And the idea is that it is very few people will end up going the distance, and maybe you train sometime for short time, but for a long enough time, like for years. uh, it is difficult, but it is very different. So after you have done that, I've been that person, and I think I might have been that person. Then it's a very different way at how you look at things and productivity. It's like a different view. I don't want to sound arrogant or something, but like I'm just trying to be honest and give you a bit of background from where I am coming. But you can appreciate, because what we will be doing right now is, I'll be asking you your ideas, and then I'll be giving some of my ideas, or giving you some links of uh, the various stages of productivity, right? So to appreciate where I'm coming from, this is the bit I want to talk about. And the final idea is line hunting versus marathon running. So when you think of productivity and getting anything done, really, a lot of time these goals are like lion hunting. So even if you have a 3-month time scale, let's say you have to work for 3 hours today, then your whole day is not like intense or something. Like you'll study 1 hour very seriously, and you'll take a break, so you just chill, and you'll come back and in your next slot, and again 1 hour you'll put in your work and then go. It's like a lion hunts and rests. Versus if you are thinking like, आज तो बहुत मेहनत करनी, I have to work very hard today, I have to like work all day, this deadline is coming. That's the mentality of a marathon runner running. So this first mentality, lion hunting, this particular terminology I picked up from Nawal, but this I've been experienced it myself. This is this, don't doubt it. Just in your mind, if you have a doubt, just remove it. Just know that lion hunting is what most human achievements and like what you mostly need for productivity. On a longer time scale, also lower time scale, also even if like a three-month goal, in the span of your life, those 3 months are nothing. So even if you have a whole life where you are 8 on 10 productive, right? That 3 months where you're being very serious for that goal and you're aiming to be 9 on 10, 10 on 10, that's still a lion hunting and not a marathon running. And you cannot do it because, like I told you, high levels will be burned out. So now I want you to write very quickly, right? And the idea for quick is because it has to be instinctive. You can work on this list later on after the session, and that will be sort of your homework if you want to take this forward, right? And I'll give you resources to take this forward. But right now, it is from all the experience you already have. What is coming to your mind instinctively that can help you in terms of broad ideas, in these common tips, in terms of why we commonly fail in being conscious, So I've given you some tips, some sort of language to think about it. So if you have to start today for the next 3 months, what would you make sure that you change, or what you do, or what you eliminate? So I'll give you 2 minutes, write as many things as come to mind. Thirty seconds, guys. Any of you is done? You can put it in the chat. You're almost done. 3 more seconds. Yeah. So you can stop now. You can continue it on it, after the session. But a lot of things have come to you. And if anyone of you would like to tell me, read it out shortly or put it in the chat, just do it right now. Unless we'll move on. I'm not pushing it because sometimes can be uncomfortable. Is there anyone doing it? Can you read it out, Sam?
Weight loss to 77, Udbhav.
Weight loss. Okay.
What's your current thing, baseline, Udbhav?
Yeah.
It's 85 kg actually right now. So
85 to 77 in 3
yeah.
months.
Okay. So that is your aim, right? But the idea is more like sort of ideas that pop up so that you can work towards that aim. This was the writing the goal part. You can work on it later. That's fine. So the idea is, think of it, these things as 2,000 rupees notes, like basically the big currency, right? When you're thinking about the 3 months thing, what you have to change, you have to put it in the systems. And it will mostly be editing things out. So if you have heard about the Occam's razor, which I talked about in the last section, it's basically, if you're building a model, keep as less parts as possible, moving parts. So less factors that you're accounting for and all. So basically the idea is that these things will determine most of your success. And that you have to get them going. You have to, build them into habits. You have to build good systems and start executing on these major things, these sort of low hanging fruits, which will majorly determine your success. And that should be probably the first thing that you do, because these are the easiest low hanging fruits relating to editing things out and all, instead of adding things. So one is like biological needs, so if you're depressed, even like clinically, or like, sometimes if you're very high on anxiety, if you're hungry, if you're drowsy, then it's very tough to be productive. So a good idea would be to start to see, okay, I can take these decisions or make these changes so that this does not happen. There's this whole book, and I read the TED talk to the link to the, I'll give the link to the TED talk, which is from the author of this book, which is the idea is that most of this depression and anxiety come from not having biological needs met, and biological and physical needs. So these are, again, like, loneliness and all, but these are much more unobvious things also, like unintuitive things. So you can go through that talk to have a very good list of ideas, what he has mentioned in the book, like what the chapters names are, in terms of, if you can remove them as a problem, then you're clearing your path to productivity. The second thing is toxic relationships. So these are not things missing as such, but things that are there and are affecting you negatively. So I'm sure I don't have to tell you that how bad it can be, right? The third is environment. If you have clean, quiet environment, you have access to rest. It is much easier, because I put you in a place where there's no bed or something, and you have to like wait for 1 hour and travel to some place to your home to finally rest. You'll not go to that 1 hour distant place to study anyway, right? So you have to have an environment where it's clean, quiet, and you have an access to rest when you want to, so that you don't feel uncomfortable. Then you have basic systems and habits. So fixing your sleep schedule so that your whole day is just not like disappearing. It sometimes happens to me. Often happens to me actually. Never mind. And negative addictions. And there's all sorts. You know what I'm talking about. So there's all sorts of negative addictions that you can get in, and sometimes it's very tough. Like we talked about how the 21st century attention grabbing thing, right? And then you can have a plan laid out. You have a deadline set. You have slots fixed. You have small goals, and you try to execute them consistently. This sort of like a warm-up takes you on to 5 on 10 productivity automatically, right? And these are sort of low-hanging fruits. Now you guys, I'll give you guys 1 minute, a little more than 1 minute maybe, because I gave you 2 minutes because this was sort of the major thing to get you going. But now I want you to think about what you'll do if it's 1 month away, that idea. What changes would you make? What extra stuff would you do to further better your performance and your time? How much you have? The time starts now. 1 minute, I'll start now. About 20 more seconds, guys. Yeah. So does anyone want to share quickly? Even it's like a couple points. You don't need to read through all of them, or even like one point you think is good or something. Just speak up. Sam, are you here?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was afraid I was not. People are not hearing.
No.
Okay. Do you have anything, Sam?
Repeat the question, please.
Okay. Basically, if you're 1 month away from a long-term goal
Ah,
and you have already done the sort of the low-hanging big chunk things
Ah.
like the 2,000 rupees notes,
ah,
and these are like removing your bad stuff from environment and all.
okay.
1 month, what would you do? 1 month left, what would you add to yours to optimize it more?
1 month left to my
Yeah.
3-month goal.
Yeah,
Long term as in 3-month goal or 6
3
month?
months goal.
3-month
The
goal.
goal is 3 months. Yeah. So,
Right.
but you're 1 month away now.
1 month away. And how much have I finished?
Like that doesn't like the idea is generally so like one is like this is your attitude at 3 months. You're taking the low hanging fruits, but you
Right.
cannot just stick to the low hanging fruits when you are 1 month away, right? Okay, so let's just continue the session because I think it will take some time for you to figure out, and we are short on time. So I do hope you guys go back to your lists and write it without referring to anything. You can take, of course, the tips or something here, but and then you of course go and take the ideas from the links that I've given here, right? So one thing is this Pomodoro technique. The idea is that uh, biologically, after about half an hour is a very good attention span for consistent focus. After that, it decreases very fast.
Half an hour?
So, like 25 minutes, half an hour, basically. So after that, it decreases very fast, very, very fast. So instead of trying to work for 1 hour consecutively, work for half an hour, wait for 5 minutes, like 25 minutes, half an hour, wait for 5 minutes. Then 5 minutes of break will give you again that high level of focus and like your mental block will go away. Then work for another half an hour. Otherwise, after half an hour, it will like keep decreasing and it will be very low level. So that's the theory behind it. This video, and I've used it a lot, right? In fact, when I did not know of this technique, but intuitively, there's an exam in class 9, I remember, and I made a lot of notes for it. One day was remaining, and I had a lot of it, so I decided I'll act on it as if my life depended on it. So I study for 1 hour and take 5 minutes rest. I had not heard of Pomodoro till 2 hours later, till my class 2 years later, till I was in my class 11th. But that's what I essentially did. And that actually exam also turned out pretty well. Like I got an AIR of 7, which was like rare for me. I did pretty good, but like 500 and all was common, but not under 10. So and that I started really believing in it, and a lot of people do it. And this is sort of like the 500 rupees notes thing. So you've had the 2,000 rupee notes covered. Now you're going out of the 500. The other is environment and the tricks you can do with it, right? So you can say that I'll have a table and a good chair, and I'll throw out stuff on my bed so that if I have to lay down, I have to clean my bed and then lay down. So I actually add a barrier and increase willpower for resting and cheating, right? And you also develop association. So if you are in bed, it will be like you sleep there, so you won't be able to study. So study on your table, but don't waste time on your table. And if you have to waste time, go to your bed. So that helps. And you can have a friend who you study together with. They are studying online along with you on a live Zoom session or something. Then it will be very silly. Like if you are playing PUBG and while you are on a study session with him online or her online. And the one thing that I did was like Starbucks, right? So what I did, so I had a goal like that, and I had exactly almost the similar thing with 3-month time frame, and I had sort of like 1 month left, about more or less, and I was not able to study in my room because I used to take rest, and even when I was being careful, once I was resting, what it led to was that I just like thought of 5 minutes of rest, but took 2 hours of rest, something like that. But I started going to a nearby Starbucks, and now it will feel very silly to give some money and then buy something and then watch YouTube videos of cats there or something. So so it was like it worked like magic. then there's this uniform effect, so if you have good hair, if you are in formal clothes, if you have like good speakers and earphones and all, it's much easier to feel like 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 a powerful in control person, and it will automatically make things easier for you. Now doing this 3 months before, like going to Starbucks since for 3 months, taking care of hair and health and how your clothes are and all, this is like a little bit too much. So that's why this more comes under 1 month thing. Then there's this food and water thing. Drinks lots of water, it makes a huge effect, and then there's this glycemic index. So basically it's how slowly that food gives you energy. So bananas have a lot of energy, but they give you energy slowly. So that's why long haul, like swimmers who have long distance swimming, take a lot of bananas. It's carbo loading because it gives you energy slowly, consistently, a lot of energy. And then there's some things like rice or something which you feel very heavy afterwards. So that makes you sleepy because that oxygen goes to your stomach, your heart, brain is not getting as much oxygen, which is very sensitive to oxygen. So you feel sleepy. So if you know the glycemic index and how to think about it a little bit, then you can sort of not have those problems of food, and that more water will also increase your capacity. Then your sleep. So now you're just fixing sleep schedule, 3 months thing. But here you're actually fixing your bed. You're taking care if the temperature is something you do about it. You are wearing comfortable clothes. You are taking care to put blue light filters and not be on screens just before bedtimes, so that you have more quality sleep. You can start that 1 month before. So now again, it will take I think 5 more minutes or like maybe 10 more minutes before the session is done. I'm sorry, I'm overshooting a bit from 7:30, but yeah, that's how things goes with me. Sorry about that.
I'm good at manage their time. So
Yeah.
much for preaching.
Yeah. So guys, just think about what changes would you do if you have 1 week, in your mentality, in how you handle things. Whatever comes to mind, take a minute.
I'll wait for the last day.
That's a very, it will be worth it.
Last minute panic.
Yep.
Actually, I thought about that. So and I think there's some kind of research done behind that. So it's not that your mind is not working, it's assimilating. You're reading and it's still processing. So towards the last day, you're able to like put everything together.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I tell myself, which is the hero story that you're talking about, which is the kind of story that you tell yourself, right? Which is, hey, I filled it at the last time, that's why I scored less. Like, so you have a way out.
Yeah.
That usually happens.
Yeah. So guys, I hope you have some points by now. Is there anything in the chat?
Udbhav says, stay relaxed. This is for exercise 1 week. He says, stay relaxed, meditate more, do things to relax mind.
Yeah. So you're thinking on the right track. So my idea is just to give more terminology, more tools, a better way of thinking about things, the right attitude, and then further resources, so you can do something like this for yourself, right? And I'm helping you by giving examples at every step. This is more like 100 rupees. That's what you can think, So 2,000 rupees, 500 rupees, now you're 100 rupees. So now track your habits closely. Like you have to be serious. If you have made a calendar app, you have done slots, you have done sleep schedule, you have to track it closely, or like you lose a lot, lose out on things. Then if you need some motivation and you need to do serious work, then there is this video, you can go through it. If there is this, you have to do some advanced planning and organization. So often it happens that the last week is a very big thing, 10 different things, this chapter, this deadline, this project, this presentation, everything has to be done together. There's other things also, that normal life things that you have to do. So you cannot, maybe it's very tough to maintain a very complicated planning organizational thing for 3 months or 1 month, but you can do it for a week. It will help you. And then there's focus and concentration hacks. So can you confuse your mind or sort of trick your mind into focusing for longer time periods, right? Now this is 48 hours. So I'll not give you time right now, because the idea is 1 minute probably not enough. And it will be, I think if you're not experienced with this, it will be very tough for you to think about something right now. So even if I give you 2 minutes, you might not be able to think of something but the idea is what problem will you be tackling? So it will be like, revising some very important things, not being very nervous, making sure that sleep and all is still okay, sticking to your guns, like, doing things normally, and whatever your plans, you execute them and make sure you get things finished. That is the aims. So what the problems are, one is anxiety and nervousness. There are a lot of ways to tackle it, and again, these are, one idea is you feel them, but then you're conscious of them, but then you have to do something about them. So it's very tough but if you have guidance, it becomes much easier. Then there's time management. So you have just 2 hours or two days. Then you can use some advanced time management skills, right? If you have something very important to remember, this question will definitely come in the exam or something, or I have to definitely say this in my presentation. You can use some memory hooks and tricks. If you have a running mate, another person who is preparing for that same thing, you both cheer each other up and discuss here 2 days are remaining, okay, just and you have maybe live sessions with him and or her, and make sure that you get done what you want to, instead of slacking off and losing hope. And then last is, you can trick your brain into working hard, right? So but these things are not sustainable. So because these are also a little bit advanced, little bit more complex. So like really managing your times, really using memory tricks for short term, having a person constantly in contact with you, and then like really holding on and like not being nervous and tricking your brain. These are not something you can do whole your life. You cannot trick your brain into working hard every day of your life, but you can do it for 2 days. And then this D-Day, that's like more like the 2 rupees. We're optimizing every bit of performance and time that you have, right? So for me, that the thing that most recent example for me of this kind was the CAT examination. That was on 24th of November last year. It was very close to this because it was like a 3-month time frame. Generally, people prepare for 3 months, and I had set my expectations. Like sort of my ambition was very high. Basically like as close to the top as I can get. Basically topping the exam, and I moved through these phases myself too. And some of them were deliberate. Some of them I realized that this happened. But I was specifically about that same day, my slot was the afternoon slot. So I had like 4 or 5 hours in the morning. So for me, it was like, for an exam like that, where you need every single bit of performance that you need is good for you. Like very, very, very extremely tiny things also matter. It's not about your preparation or habits or anything now. It's basically about how you manage your internal inner state, how calm you are, how much energy you have, and all of that. What makes you feel good, being motivated. So you can make it, has to be very personal. And I wanted to share this despite it being personal for 2 reasons. One is to show that how far you can go and people take it sometimes, and how practical it can be or not be. And the other is to sort of encourage you all to also do something like this and do something personal like this too. So this is what I had. So I would, in the morning, I'd eat light fruits and carbs. I would have water earlier in the day, so that I do not have to go to the washroom in the middle of the exam. So I see a list of people waiting. This was a list of people who looked up to me or were expecting things of me, or I was in contact with and who mattered to me. This was for the good, close, and DO thing. It makes me feel good. Then maybe listen to some ASMR or relax my body in the cab when I'm going. Talk to my parents. Then I had a music playlist of very particularly selected songs which really pumped me up, which I was making in the last 2 weeks leading up to it. Then I had to calm down right before. So maybe I've done a lot of meditation. So maybe doing it for like 30 seconds and getting hold of my nerves. Then there was this spec ad video of this, basically like a video of this Tesla thing and like Elon Musk thing, 2.5 minute thing, but it was very motivating for me, right? So I thought maybe I would watch that. And then there's a list of people I mentioned in my previous session of all the people I look up to in my life that I want to learn from. And then there are 50-60 people, like not my parents and friends, like more like international people, like celebrities, not celebrities, like just people I look up to. So look at those people so that you get some inspiration. Then, I had some notes in my wallet, which I had written down, like some quotes. Then I had started for this particular trouser, and I'll do maybe a 7-hour workout. Maybe I'll dance a bit and I'll just shout, because it helps to cheer you up if you are throwing your arms up in the air. And there's this whole this psychology of physical things that you can do to decrease your stress hormones and make good hormones, or make you more courageous, and just overall make you more positive internally, biologically speaking. So, and then so this last thing, and never mind, you'll not, this is a weird stupid thing, but the idea is I've also written massage in Starbucks. So I was thinking maybe I'll go to the Starbucks again, where I've done so much of my studying, so that to get in the groove, just I'll sit there for 10 minutes and before going for the exam, and then maybe I'll take a massage. Or this Urban Claps guys come and do it at any home. So there's like a question, maybe will I do it? But of course I ended up doing, and if you guys notice here, look at the date at the bottom. It's, why is it coming? Can you see it? November 22 written there, 2019 at 3:30 p.m. Friday. So this was actually a list that I last edited 2 days before the CAT exam, which was on 24th November. So this was really what I was planning to do. And I wanted to share it, like I told you, for the reasons that I did. The idea is that I was able to do, let's say, 1/5 of the thing that I thought. Actually, that cab made me sick was a 1 hour thing. And then I was actually feeling very nauseous when I got there, So it's definitely not how it envisioned. But the idea is you can think that far ahead, and people do think that far ahead. And there's this whole thing about performance and time and how much you can optimize it. And it really, really matters on those days. So remember how we talked about those heroic acts, and how we talked about exceptional times, and those are the times that can make you exceptional. This is for that kind of day. And it's not uncommon if you look in the Silicon Valley industry, like companies and like people who function at the highest level. It's very, very tough to do it consistently. But there's a lot of people doing it. Like it's not it's a very small percentage of the population, but the number of people are very large who are doing it to a large degree every day, all the time. Now, a lot of these videos that I've told you about is from this YouTube channel, which can be like the gateway to productivity. I'm recommending this because this is what I have followed, and I could have given you random links and all, but he does it well, so why not stick to it? I can assure you, almost any idea that you have written in any of these 4 or 5 sort of stages, where there will be a video of him addressing that. So basically, this whole channel is on productivity and habits is what I'll cover tomorrow. And he has playlists. You can check out playlist wise or just video wise. And maybe some ideas that you have, you can search for it on his channel and you'll probably find a video. And then he gives a lot of good resources in his description and all to further study it. And for the people who perform at that high level, so that high levels of demand, who have to be productive every single day for years without burning out, think about it if you would like to take their place. It's a very tough position to be in, to be at 9 or 10 productivity every day. And so Elon Musk, for example, actually tried really hard to not become the CEO of Tesla in 2006-7 when he was already CEO of SpaceX. It's very easy for him to just let other people do the work, and he had shares in the company, so that would increase in value. But the other people not making it work, so they sort of forced him to be the CEO of Tesla too, and also get into the day-to-day operations instead of just leaving his shares there and seeing them grow. So it's not like so a lot of these positions, there has to be something said about how people view them and how tough it is, and if you actually want to do that. But at the end of the day, it's still not that hard to increase the productivity, especially to 8 on 10 sustainably. And there is a process to it. There is a method to the madness, and a lot of things you can do about it. You are not helpless. So the next time you feel like I'm feeling it this consistently and all of that, just remember there's a lot you can do about it. But that was all that I had for today. And if there's any other questions or any comments, I would love to take them. Yeah. So anything, Patra, Josephine, Ansela, Utha?
Josephine.
I'm reading the chat. Yeah, she said very complete, and partner said I'll send out my piece for editing, make more people read it in social media anticipation. Yeah, so I really want this to help you guys, and I really think a lot of people just suffer and make so many bad mistakes and like unnecessary things because of this not thinking about these things consciously, not being aware. So I do hope you guys go back on the list, use these resources, and use Thomas Frank's channel as a gateway, because he has lists of a lot of tools, calendars, apps, whatever you can think of, and it will just open your world to it, right? And he has been making videos, like 15-minute videos for 5 years, 2 a week. Literally have like more than 200, 300 videos on just this topic, optimizing almost every small and big aspect, right? And a big part of it is also habit building, and that thing that we'll cover tomorrow. So that was it from me.
Awesome.
Thanks. Yeah.
Feedback.
Yeah. So you guys can give me feedback now or in the session. Oh, nice partner. So I'm really looking forward to actually people being helped from this, and I'll combine this with sort of what we do tomorrow, and then to give you really long-term tools to work on your goals.
Cool.
Yeah, cool.
We'll put the feedback form in the WhatsApp group. Please fill that. Tomorrow will be interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. So tomorrow's habit building, some elements will be common, but a lot of focused in different ways and a lot of different ways to think and terminology and all of that. I hope at least all of you guys at least join, because it will definitely be very useful for you guys. Yeah, cool.
Done job. Thank you, boss.
Good.
All right. See you guys. Have a good day.
Right. Yeah. Bye-bye.
Stay safe. Keep right.
Thanks, Pranshu. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Sam. Bye.
Very good. Yeah. See you guys. Bye-bye.
All right. See you, Josephine. Bye.
Yeah.